I would love to develop that into a relationship. So I'm just going to fast forward past the, and you still get to a point where no matter how laid back or non-ego driven you are, when somebody mentions something, there's still a little part of you that's like, oh man, I really like that bass line, or something like that extra part or that post hook. But I'm also, I was an artist first as a bass player, songwriter in a band before I started engineering and producing. So I know how it is to be on the other side of the glass, proverbial glass, or wearing headphones in a booth. So I know how to talk to people. And that was a big thing is that's one of the biggest, as far as recording and stuff, you need to know how to talk to people. Like I've worked with producers and artists that it's like, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like they're both saying the same thing, but the way the engineer is like talking to the artist in the booth, I'd be scared shitless right now if I was in the booth because it's just you got to know how to talk to people.
Yeah, the social skills.
Yep, 100%.
I have a degree in psychology, and I tell people, I kind of use it. I mean, I don't use it at all, but I kind of use it.
Nice.
Because like when you're working with artists, you kind of need to read their emotional, what they're giving off.
Oh yeah. I was working with a band one time, and the singer was in the control room. We turned the control room into a booth. The band, so she was recording vocals. The band, 3 guys, the guitar player, bass player, and drummer were in the back. And this is a big control room, so they were in the back cracking jokes. So every time I hit the talkback, I knew and was scared that she could hear them laughing. She was very sensitive when it came to recording. So I looked back and I was like, hey guys, can y'all keep it down? I don't want her to hear you laughing when I hit the talkback and think that you're laughing at her. And they're like, oh, no. We're literally just talking about a joke that something happened the other day. It's not about her. And I was like, okay. I hit the talkback and said, hey, that was super dope. I think you could get the first part, yada, yada, better. Let's try that again. They were still laughing. She goes, what? They think it was terrible, don't they? And I was like, no. They're laughing at another joke. She's like, I'm coming in. And then she came back in. We had to explain to her that they weren't laughing. She had to take a break.
Oh, man.
Get some tea, chill out for about an hour. Then she went back out. And as soon as she went back out, the guys came up to me and were like, hey, dude, we are so sorry from now on. If you have any directional advice in the studio, we're just listening to you. And I was like, no worries. I just,
Yeah. It's like being a nice person, but also knowing what you know and like being like firm about it sometimes,
Yeah, because if you want them to do it again, because at the end of the day, I read a tweet from a famous producer, a buddy of mine, and he once said, if a song turns out bad, at the end of the day, it's the producer's fault. It's on the producer. Whether it's the instrumental, the lyrics, the vocals, at the end of the day, it comes down to the producer. So you got to know how to step up and say,
take responsibility.
Yeah, like, hey, we need to get this down. This isn't something I can fix manually chopping up or with tune or something like that. We need to do it again.
Yeah, dope. So do you have any rituals or routines that you do to either get or stay inspired?
Listening to music, listening, and I know as generic as it sounds, listening to all types of music, because that can be so beneficial. Turning the screen off towards the end of a song when I'm writing, like working on an instrumental, and I'm listening, I'll turn the screen off on my laptop and do a pass on it.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Freelander mentioned that he does this also.
Yeah. I love having, when I'm working in studios and I have a TV, I love having stuff going on the TV. But the thing about a screen and human beings, if there's a screen on, you're going to be looking at it. And if you're looking at a screen, that's taking up part of your processing, like your CPU in your brain.
Yep.
So
you're not just using your hearing.
Yep. So turning the screen off, and that's why, although there's my wife who's a music therapist and minored in psychology, she said there's no actual scientific data that backs up the fact that how when you lose one of your senses, like somebody who's blind, Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, that their hearing becomes better. It doesn't actually become, because I used to say, well, yeah, their hearing becomes better. That's why they're better musicians. It doesn't it doesn't actually make that sense better. But the fact that you don't have that other stuff taking away from that, you're able to focus more on that other sense.
Right.
So, and there's something to be said about that.
You just have more bandwidth.
Yes.
Or whatever. Amazing.
Yep.
Awesome. Do you have any go-to session musicians?
Yeah. I've got some buddies here in Atlanta. Most of the stuff these days I've been doing by myself. I got to a point where, a lot of session musicians these days produce and engineer, because it's hard to pay the bills just doing session work. Unless you're in like Nashville, in the actual scene, the country scene where that's a, the big machine. It's hard. So it's hard to be able to get guys to stay on board for stuff. And I also got to a point where I just wanted to be able to do it all myself. So nowadays, that's another reason why I've been going in on practicing, learning piano and guitar. A big goal of mine now is to be able to play piano, drums, and guitar, get up to the level that I'm at as a bass player.
Wow. Good luck.
While continually to also practice bass, because that's a hard thing for me to practice bass. I've definitely just put that down and laid it to rest for years.
Yeah. The funny thing about bass is we don't have to riff about this too long because probably just the bass nerds will geek out about it. But it's like the most fun instrument to play in the context of a band or a group or a production, but it's not the most fun instrument to play by itself. So it kind of
exactly,
which is also like you were saying how you picked up the guitar to start writing songs and stuff. Like
Yep.
Very similar situation for me. Like a year into playing bass, I was like, I love playing bass with other people, but like when I'm by myself, I sometimes just want to play a guitar. So it's like there is no more. I would say there's no instrument that's more fun to play with in the context of a group than bass for me.
Yeah,
hands
down. One of my hardest things about practicing is that every time I pick up a guitar or sit down on our grand, we have a baby grand piano. Sounds gorgeous. I'll start going over some chords and stuff, and maybe some stuff I've found online, and immediately I will kind of sway off of it and write a song, and then I'm like, shit, I want to record this as a producer songwriter, and that's my biggest problem. Is I sit down for practicing the guitar for 30 minutes. 5 minutes into it, I'm like, that progression is sick. I'm going to record it on my phone so I don't forget it. I record it on my phone, then I'm like, well, shit, actually, in Logic, I would probably take this, chop this up, and do this with it. And then, 6 hours later, wife's like, how did your practice go? And I'm like, you want to hear this cool song?
Wow.
So
amazing.
I'm trying to get better about that. Another way.
Well, it sounds like you're doing things right, to be honest.
I mean, I'm still writing songs. I'm working. I'm a songwriter professionally, so it's not like I'm bad, but I'm also at a point now where I'm starting to get frustrated in my songwriting production because I've gotten my mixing and production up to a certain level that now I feel like my actual musicianship is too far below. And like I said, I want to be able to pick up guitar and a piano and be able to shred like I can on bass.
Yeah.
Whereas on bass, and I tell people I can, they're like, oh, well, you play everything, huh? And I'm like, well, I could go tour and sit in unless it's some crazy jazz or odd time signature death metal stuff. I can hang with most people on bass. I could not do that with guitar or piano. You might hear my production and you're like, wow, you're a really good guitar player. I'm like, yeah, I'm a better engineer and producer behind Logic, but I want to that's one of the things that's been driving me to practice piano and guitar to really, try to get those up there too.
Totally. I tell people like, I'm great at really slow guitar solos.
Nice. You mean like slowing the DAW down and then like just very speed recording and then turning it up?
Like the slowest John Mayer guitar solo you can imagine. That's how I play. That's how I play. Yeah. Exactly. That's how I play guitar.
Throw some reverb on it. Yeah.
Exactly. So do you mix and master all your tracks, or do you send out for anything?
The recent placement that I had with James Droll on Prescription, that was mixed and mastered by other people, which was awesome because as somebody who produced it, wrote the instrumental, recorded vocals, mixed it, gave it the rough mix, I love having separate sets of ears. I think that can only get better. But for most of my stuff, like any stuff we're pitching for sync, or I work with an artist that's not necessarily being released on their album, I do all the mixing and mastering myself.
Dope. If you could impart some wisdom to somebody getting started in music production today, what would you tell them?
Put the time in. Put the time in. I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of people always ask, and I see people online asking all these influencers, the producers that do a lot of these tutorials and stuff, and I think that's all very important. Studying anything online, studying other people, but putting the time in is the biggest thing, and doing it over and over and over, and hours every day.
Amazing. So how can our audience find out a bit more about you?
don't Google me. I don't think much is going to pop up. My Instagram, which is just my name, Ben Didelot, is probably the most up to date reference of what I've got going on. Any mixing and mastering on the side for clients, stuff that I have not produced, is something that I've been doing lately. Mixing is a passion of mine. The engineering side, I love doing it, and so I release everything on my page, stuff like that. Any placements as far as production and stuff. And I'm actually probably going to be getting into some small frame amount of tutorials and tricks and stuff that I've used in as production tutorials, and then also on sample packs. I'm actually starting to do some sample packs we're going to do probably for Splice or something like that. I've got a buddy that has right now our first pack. We're starting off with Colt Bowen, who is a drummer of mine, engineer, producer, good friend of mine. He's got an organ in his studio that has a fun machine. It's a drum machine that's called a fun machine, and it's got the dopest samples and loops, and it's a beat machine from the 70s.
Wow.
We're gonna sample it, mix the shit out of it, chop stuff up, and make trap beats out of just the organ, out of the bass and the keyboard parts and the drums, and then break all those down and release them as sample packs too.
Amazing. So if you have a link to any of this, or when you do, you could just send it over, and I'll add it to the show notes.
Oh, very cool. Awesome.
Yeah,
very cool.
Absolutely. So wow, Ben, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for all the wisdom you shared, and it's just been great to meet you, man.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. Sorry if I talked too much on some stuff, but
no, man, it was great. The more you talk, the
awesome.
better. The more you talk, the less I need to talk, and that and that's always
more
good.
content is better. Awesome, very
Absolutely.
cool, Ben. Thanks so much for reaching out and having me on, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Have a great day, man.
All right, likewise. Peace, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Secret Sonics. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ben as much as I did. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, I would really appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcast and leave us a rating and review. That really helps the podcast move forward. In addition to that, you can subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and you could find out more at secretsonics.co, where you can also choose an app to subscribe to on. As always, I'm open to your feedback, and I would love to hear from you at secretsonics@gmail.com, where you can let me know what you want to hear about and who you want to hear from. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Secret Sonics. That about wraps it up for this episode. So thank you so much for tuning in again. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great week and dig in.